And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forever Football on Forever Sports. A pretty interesting weekend of Premier League football. Some massive results and some really, really big scorelines. And a couple of interesting transfer stories as well as the transfer window closes in just a few days. So a couple of transfers coming down to the wire. A couple of teams still looking to strengthen a potentially record-breaking transfer that could be confirmed within the next 24 hours for Manchester United. So lots and lots of things to keep an eye out as we sort of enter the September period. And it's been quite an interesting August period. Also, no international break sort of coming up now as we sort of have come used to in the past. We often get sort of 3 or 4 weekends in, and then we'd have an international break. So we've still got quite a lot of football ahead of us. Obviously, the World Cup has changed a few things with regards to scheduling and stuff like that, which has been quite nice actually, because we've got quite an extended run of Premier League football to watch before the World Cup brings it all to a break later on this year in November, December. But before we look at the results, some of the fixtures, we've got midweek games happening Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We will have some watch along starting this week as well as we look to try and continue to build up our football offering. For rugby fans, we'll be live after this as well for a rugby news show, which is going to be a very interesting one. But so in our preview on Friday, we were talking about the fact that there were going to be some interesting games for the likes. I'm not even necessarily looking at the top teams. Your likes of Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, who started quite well. You know, we wondered if they were going to be able to keep up their decent form. With Brighton, for example, sitting tied second now after the weekend. So it's been quite an interesting start of the season for them. And the question always is how long can these runs go? Because you look at the likes of, for example, Arsenal, who are now sitting at four from four, 12 points, the only team not to have dropped points so far. You know, the big question becomes how much longer can they keep going? And we're going to go look at sort of the weekend news. We're going to look at some of the results and some of the fixtures for the week, and then we're going to look at some transfer news to sort of wrap things up. And it should be quite an interesting week. We're going to the transfer window. Chelsea looking to bring in a couple of players. Manchester United still looking to bring in a couple of players, potentially a big player coming up. Wesley Fofana, for example, was confirmed over the weekend. There's a couple of interesting signs, for example. Nottingham Forest have just confirmed a signing from Atletico Madrid. So there's been quite a lot of movement within the transfer window over the last few days, and that's only going to keep happening until the transfer window does close this week. But in terms of this weekend, in terms of some of the results that we did see, this is let's look at some of the results. These are the results of the weekend, and we still have a couple of games. This is just by date. So we go by round there. These were the results from this weekend. So it started off with a 1-0 victory for Manchester United against Southampton. Not a phenomenal performance, if you look at it on the face of it. I think, Manchester United fans are still getting quite frustrated at how they're not quite dominating matches, stuff like that. But, you look at the stats, almost 50-50 possession, Southampton having more shots. It doesn't stream of a dominant performance for Manchester United. And I think the biggest issue there is still trying to find their best side, still trying to make some big decisions regarding some big players, the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? The integration of Casemiro, will they be adding another forward, for example? So lots of questions there. Everton got a draw with Brentford, a match that Everton really needs to win. And Everton I think Lampard could be very well one of the first players to get the sack if Everton don't sort of pull up their socks and start finding some results, because they needed to find a result this weekend and they still couldn't. And look, Brentford are not an easy side to beat. I mean, they've hammered Manchester United this season, but an Everton of old would have looked at this Brentford game and said, well, that's the point. That's the position where we can get points. And given how bad their start was, they had to go and look for the points there. They had no other option. They had to go and find all 3 points, and they couldn't find all 3 points. So Everton's slow start continues. Brighton getting a massive victory over Leeds, just the 1-0. However, if you look at sort of the table, both these sides had very good starts for the season, and Brighton getting that 1-0 victory was incredibly important to keep up what is a phenomenal start for them. And I mean, Brighton now very much looking to sort of get into the top 10. And you never know, if they were to get things right, they could even be pushing for European football. They do look like a team that can go quite a long way. However, what we know with teams that start very well, and teams like Brighton, sort of mid-table clubs, is it all comes down to depth. If they get injuries in the wrong places, then suddenly it becomes quite difficult for them to compete over sort of the length of the season. Chelsea, despite getting a red card, did get a 2-1 victory over Leicester, which was quite a big result. Leicester, very poor start to the season, does continue. They have also lost Wesley Fofana to Chelsea, which is a massive loss to them. But he was certainly getting onto the score sheet. So he's enjoying quite a nice start to his Chelsea career. Conor Gallagher getting the red card earlier on was not ideal for a player who lit up the Premier League last year in a Crystal Palace shirt. So it was frustrating to see him that not get going this season so far. But Sterling with a brace is a big win for Chelsea, because the big sort of question was, where were Chelsea going to find goals? They still do not have an out-and-out striker at the moment. And if you look at the Lions, for example, they're very much playing with a sort of a front two of Sterling and Kai Havertz. They don't have an out-and-out striker. So Kai Havertz sort of taking that position of playing up front. But they're missing, they haven't replaced Lukaku. They're looking to try and bring Aubameyang. We're going to talk a little bit about that update in a bit. But Leicester just not really at the races this season so far, and a frustrating game for them, because they did dominate possession. They had far more shots and more on target, but at the end of the day, it's all about goals. And despite having a one-man advantage for about an hour of the match, couldn't drive home that advantage. However, the big result, the big game of the weekend, was Liverpool absolutely dismantling Bournemouth 9-0. And the biggest, or the funniest thing rather, was the fact that in the match with 9 goals, which was 18 goal involvements, 19 shots, 12 on target, Mo Salah didn't get onto the score sheet, nor did he find an assist. So a lot of fantasy players very frustrated. But the game that Liverpool needed, because this is the first win of the season for them in their 4th game. So an incredibly slow start for Liverpool, but this is potentially going to be a turning point for them. And, whilst goal difference doesn't mean a massive amount right now, having +9 towards the end of the season is going to be a big help, because the goal difference wasn't particularly good, given the fact that they had drawn 2 games and lost Manchester United. So it was actually in deficit. So it's amazing how they went from a -1 goal difference to now having a +8 across 4 games. An average of 2 goals a game to the good is not bad at all. And I think, the biggest thing with scoring 9 goals is the amount of confidence goes across the squad. Luis Diaz on target, Tsimikas with an assist, Fabio Carvalho on target, Tsimikas with another assist there, Firmino scoring goals, Trent Alexander scoring goals, Firmino getting assists, Harvey Elliott scoring goals, Luis Diaz. So there'll be a lot of confidence for a lot of the players. And I think that's, confidence is a massive thing. Manchester City getting a 4-2 result over Crystal Palace, and the biggest sort of talk of the weekend was the Erling Haaland hat-trick. 62 minutes, 70 minutes, 81 minutes. A 20-minute hat-trick or 80-minute hat-trick from Erling Haaland. And people were talking about, it wasn't going to take him time to adapt to the Premier League. Was he going to be able to make the step up as quickly? Was he going to be able to repeat the feats in the Bundesliga? The answer is yes. I mean, that 18-minute hat-trick was the type of things he was doing in the Bundesliga that made him such a promising prospect. The fact that he could just score goals for fun. And, Crystal Palace going 2-0 up against Manchester City, will probably be thinking that, draws, at very least, a draws on the cards. He's got to keep compact. And unfortunately, a second half performance for the ages for City, as they scored 4 goals, including a hat-trick from Haaland, which is dangerous. I mean, for a lot of teams, I think a lot of teams we were watching that and going, that's the Haaland we were hoping we weren't going to see in the Premier League. But I think we are going to be in a bit of a golden era of strikers right now for the Premier League, and the looks of, it'll be interesting to see what Darwin Núñez does when he comes back. Ronaldo probably leaving United, but Harry Kane becoming the joint fourth all-time goal scorer in the Premier League. You've got Erling Haaland, you've got Gabriel Jesus, who started very well. You've got Alexander Isak, who's just joined Newcastle. So the striking talent in the Premier League is probably at some of the best we've seen in the last sort of decade, really. Arsenal continuing their perfect start, 2-1 victory over Fulham, and they're 4 from 4, which I don't think too many people would have really predicted before the beginning of the season. Odegaard on target, Gabriel also on target, somebody who has been finding the net recently. Alexander Mitrovic continues his goal scoring form. I talked about strikers. You won't really mention him because he's not within the top sides, but a top striker is Mitrovic, and he's already topped quite a few of the stats so far this season, including, I think it was shots on target, the amount of shots he's had. He's scoring again. and Fulham not being able to get the result, but are looking competitive in the Premier League, and that's not always been the case when Fulham have come up. They've sometimes come up and then really looked out of place and really struggled to translate their championship form into the Premier League, because they are a side that often do very well in the Championship, can even dominate the Championship. But they haven't been able to take that sort of step up in the past sort of couple of years, but do look a little bit more comfortable within the Premier League so far. Really gotten a couple of good results. Didn't look completely out of their depth against Arsenal, which is a big boost for them. So yeah, I think it's a Fulham side with some potential. You know, I think Bird Leonard was a very exciting signing. You've got Andres Pereira coming in there for Manchester United, Bobby Reed and Mitrovic are quality players that can get a job done. And I think that there are some players, there are potential match winners, and I think Bird Leonard is a potential match winner, or at least a match saver rather, for Fulham. So interesting to see how they're going. But Arsenal are just on fire at the moment. Martin Odegaard really starting to look like the Odegaard that Real Madrid really never saw. Gabriel Jesus is looking probably like what City wanted him to do. I don't think City are going to be crying. Obviously, they've got Erling Haaland, but he does look very impressive in front of goal. And the question becomes for Arsenal, for example, can their big players stay fit? Can Gabriel Martinelli last the season? Is Jesus going to be able to last the season? Can Martin Odegaard be solid and consistent throughout the season? Because, you know, whilst there is depth, certain players drop off. And, you know, Arsenal are known for being a side which can suddenly go from being in a brilliant run to being really, really poor and really and struggling. Speaking of struggles, the Villa struggles continue. However, West Ham finally get off the mark their first win of the season. So a massive relief for David Moyes at his side. But Steven Gerrard very much under pressure at Aston Villa, because they have not got to the start they wanted. They signed some very good players. There's been quite a lot of money and bringing some big stars, but not getting the results so far. And Newcastle continue to be unbeaten. We did say that whilst, you know, on the face of it, you know, you expect Newcastle to beat Wolves, given the fact that Wolves were in particularly good form. Wolves were a very good side last year. And this weekend, Newcastle going and getting a draw, probably not the worst result. And it was a phenomenal goal. And they did leave it very late. I think they scored in the 90th minute. But Alan Saint-Maximin looks a really special player. And they're now going to add as another Isak in the club record transfer. So this Newcastle side, I mean, you go look at it, for example, and you look at some of the signings they made, and, you know, Chris Wood, on the face of it, not maybe a spectacular signing, but he's going to literally be backup. But you look at Sven Botman in the defense. Nick Pope is a very good signing. Kieran Trippier last season. Dan Burn coming in. You know, and this is without Callum Wilson, who has a bad injury record. But you've got John Joe Shelby, who can still come back. You're now going to have Isak coming in. So they've signed some very intelligent players throughout the team. Joe Willock, for example, is a very good player. Miguel Almiron looking like the player that they thought they had signed. You know, he took so long to find a goal in the Premier League, but now it is looking better and better. So again, it's a very exciting project to watch, is Newcastle. And then the final result of the weekend, Tottenham Hotspur 2, Nottingham Forest 0, despite Dean Henderson saving a penalty. Harry Kane, what a player. What a player. I mean, the joint third all-time goal scorer needs one more goal to become the outright third highest goal scorer in Premier League history. Probably still does not get the respect he maybe deserves, because he's done this at Spurs in a team which have been very inconsistent. They've sometimes been even a title challenging team. They've sometimes been a team that can't really make top four. And throughout the time, he's looked at leaving. He's looked at maybe according time and going somewhere else, but whenever his transfers have fallen through, he's just gone back to the drawing board and gone back to scoring goals for Tottenham, and probably going to finish as their best ever player. And at this rate, will probably definitely break Rooney's record for goals scored in the Premier League if he does stay in the Premier League for the next couple of seasons. And if he stays in the Premier League for his entire career, probably the biggest threat to Alan Shearer's record that there's been in a long time, because he just does score goals for fun. And I think what the big positive there for Spurs is the fact that Richarlison getting some assists. Kulusevski looks a really good player. Looks better and better every single time he plays. So it's a very good Spurs side, which is starting to sort of come into its own. You know, Perisic being brought in the summer. Antonio Conte, you know, loving that three at the back, but now finding a really good balance with the players he has. You know, he's got lots of depth in the likes of Højbjerg starting with Bentancur, but he can still bring on a Basuma, who they brought in, during the transfer window. There's still no Romero, no Mora, so there's still a couple of players missing, but it's still a very good Spurs side. And for Forest, Dean Henderson getting that save, but struggling to find goals at the moment. And Jesse Lingard leading the line. He's not a striker at the end of the day. So Forest are signing a lot of players. In fact, they're spending a stupid amount of money, but struggling to find enough of a goal threat across that 11. So we look at the league table. This is how things do stand after the first 4 weekends. So as I said, Arsenal 4 from 4 on 12 points at the top of the table. Then there are 3 teams currently tied for second: Man City, Tottenham, and Brighton. So Brighton, just the only blemish on that scorecard, that draw in the second week. But apart from that, 3 wins from 4. Graham Potter and his men will be very, very chuffed. They've also conceded the fewest amount of goals in the league. And I think that's a very big stat for them. If you are a side like Brighton and you already play, for example, Manchester United, and you're not conceding goals, that is a good sign. And, for example, Man City, on the other hand, are a team that have scored only 13 goals. They're scoring for fun, but they do look susceptible to concede. Arsenal scoring 11 goals, conceding 3 so far. Spurs scoring 9, conceding 3. And the big big movements here have been Manchester United and Liverpool, who are sitting down at the bottom half of the table, and even at the bottom quarter of the table a week ago with those wins. Manchester United going back-to-back victories. Liverpool getting their first win of the season. They've suddenly climbed up to 8th and 9th. Manchester United currently tied with Newcastle, who again are still yet to lose a match. But unfortunately, the problem with draws is that they are only 1 point. But Newcastle will be very happy with where they are. But disaster, because I don't think too many people would have put Everton, Wolves, Leicester as your 3 teams in the relegation zone after the first 4 rounds. So Brendan Rodgers under a lot of pressure. Frank Lampard under a lot of pressure. West Ham getting their first points of the season, but Aston Villa under a lot of pressure as well with Steven Gerrard. Forest will probably be all right where they are. They'll be chuffed with the fact that they've already found 4 points. But Fulham sitting 11th place, and they'll be very chuffed with that because, as I said, they haven't looked out of place in the Premier League, which has often been an issue with them. In fact, it was their first loss of the season this weekend. So they'll be quite chuffed with that. But in terms of what we've got to come this week, a couple of midweek games, which is quite interesting to see at this point in the season. But the nice thing, and nice midweek games as well. We've got on tomorrow night, we've got Crystal Palace taking on Brentford, Fulham taking on Brighton, and Southampton taking on Chelsea, Leeds versus Everton. Everton so desperate for a result, but it's a Leeds side that have had a reasonable start to the season. The interesting games for me are obviously West Ham versus Tottenham. West Ham desperate to get some points, but playing against the Spurs side, which have looked pretty good. Liverpool versus Newcastle should be quite a good game on Thursday, on Wednesday rather, and then you've got Leicester taking on Manchester United, and Leicester also a team desperate for a result. Arsenal taking on Villa, so very good chance for them to go 5 from 5. City taking on Nottingham Forest. You don't think they should have too many issues with that. Chelsea away to Southampton should be all right for them. And Brighton against Fulham. Fulham, whilst they've looked good, Brighton another opportunity for them to try and find at least another point, if not 3, and to keep up their almost perfect start so far to the season. So a very interesting Premier League weekend, and the fact that we've got midweek fixtures followed by weekend fixtures. I mean, we're going to be 6 rounds into the Premier League in by the first weekend of September. That's very unusual. And as I said, it's 3rd, then it's the 10th, then it's 16th. We're playing Premier League football non-stop for a long time. The first international break coming after the 18th of September, before we return in October. So by then we will have 8 rounds. 8 rounds for the first international break. It's a very unique Premier League season because we don't often see that. And that for me is probably what the most exciting part is. The fact that, we're going to hit 8 out of 38 rounds in for the first international break. So managers can very well be sacked by then. There'll be justification because sometimes you'll have 3 or 4 matches or 3 or 4 rounds. Managers will be under pressure, but they're sitting there saying, well, it's only been a month. They need the international breaks and more time with their players. However, after 8 rounds, you can sit there going, well, we're sitting in the relegation zone with 1, 2, 6 points. We're already in the relegation scrap. Now's the time to start making big decisions. So we wait and see exactly what's going to happen there with some of those matches. I think that Lampard, Gerrard, even Brendan Rodgers could be under quite a lot of pressure if they don't manage to turn things around. Moving on to a little bit of transfer news. Larry's saying, hi man, what days do you talk about cricket? We're still looking at our cricket offering at this stage. I don't think we're going to be looking at potentially bringing a new show. We might be looking at potentially a cricket podcast though, which could hopefully be kicking it off maybe at the end of September ahead of the T20 World Cup. So a bit of plans in the background to try and get that going. But we are very much taking quite a big focus on football ahead of the World Cup, which starts in November, December. They're saying I saw a meme that said how to cook liver with 10 hug. Go Arsenal and Gunners go firing. Yeah, good times to be a Gunner supporter. Interesting times to be a United and Liverpool supporter because we started pretty slowly, and Liverpool, were the team that was supposed to be pushing City to the limits last season, off to such a bad start. The question is this 9-0 going to be the big turning point? Manchester United very much in a growing and a transition period, but how long can you justify bad performances whilst you're going with a new manager before you actually start seeing a bit of pressure? You start seeing results quite soon. But what's always interesting when it comes to Manchester United perspective is the transfer window. And the big news is that Anthony is expected to fly to Manchester to sign his Manchester United contract, which is going to be a deal worth 100 million euros, a Eredivisie transfer fee record. 85 million pounds for the Ajax winger. As usual, Manchester United paying far too much for their players. Because if they'd signed them maybe 2 months ago, they probably could have gotten away with 50-60 million pounds or 50-60 million euros even. So Manchester United continue to be really poor in the transfer window, not in terms of not being able to get their targets, because they are going to have signed Lisandro Martinez, Casemiro, Anthony, and Malaysia, who've all looked very good players. So they've signed good players, but have pretty much overpaid for almost every single deal. And people, unfortunately, clubs know that they can take Manchester United for a ride because they know they will get the money. Martin Dubravka is supposed to be coming in for Manchester United as a potential late goalkeeping replacement for Dean Henderson, trying to put a bit of pressure on De Gea. Rumours that they might be going after a right back or another midfield, or even a striker. But at the end of the day, still paying far too much money, but getting the player, I suppose, at least. So as a Manchester United fan, you can at least get excited about the fact that they are signing a player that could be world class. But Anthony's certainly not a €100 million player right now. And that's the frustrating thing, is that most teams will sign a player for 40-50 million and turn them into a €100 million player. When was the last time Manchester United turned any player into a €100 million player? Been a while. Fafana is having his medical today. Apparently, he's gone to the US to do it. And apparently, it's obviously quite a big medical to have, because he did miss a lot of last season through injury, so they need to make sure there aren't any issues there. It is supposed to be a £70 million deal. Once again, Leicester absolutely milking every club drive, any transfer fee. We saw what they did with Harry Maguire. But a very interesting signing is that Renan Lodi from Atletico Madrid has signed for Nottingham Forest on a season loan. He's got 27 Champions League appearances, and he did play quite a bit for Atletico Madrid. Apparently, there is an option to buy him for 30 million euros should they be happy with the loan. But I think that's a very interesting signing, and interesting that Nottingham Forest have capacity to be able to bring off that signing, because 24 years old, still very young. He has played for Atletico quite a lot. If you look at his amount of appearances, for example, he has played a total of 84 matches already for Atletico. He played 29 times in the league last season, scoring 2 goals. He was playing 10 of their Champions League, played in every single one of their Champions League games. So very, very impressive signing for Forest to be able to pull off. Other deals, for example, there's obviously big rumours between Chelsea and Aubameyang as they look to try and find their striker for the season. Some of the paper talk earlier this morning was potentially Chelsea looking at Zaha. Villa are selling El Ghazi apparently to Eredivisie, to PSV Eindhoven. Obviously, still big talks about Ronaldo, about whether he's going to stay, whether he's going to go. For a Spurs perspective, I think Sergio Reguilon is set to join Atletico Madrid, whilst Harry Winks is supposed to go on loan to Serie A. And Liverpool, who are looking at going after Ruben Neves, that's apparently basically off, because Bruno Lage, the Wolves manager, came out and said that he is 99% certain that Ruben Neves will stay at the club. But we wait and see what could happen there, because obviously things do change. And in the flick of a switch, Fulham apparently going after a couple of players. They have had talks with Lemon Kurzawa, who's a very good player. PSG left back. So I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, that would be the first time that they've bought in a PSG player, because they did bring in goalkeeper 2 years ago from PSG. But yeah, I'm interested to see how Fulham go. I think Fulham potentially stay up. I think Forest will do well to stay up. Bournemouth, I think, are probably going to go back down. So it'll be interesting to see if we can, if two of the three players, of the teams rather, that got promoted do manage to sort of stay up. But that's pretty much the news that's going on. We still will be live again tomorrow for another football news show. In terms of our watch-alongs for football this week, we are going to get them going. This week, we are hoping that we will probably do Manchester United versus Leicester on Thursday. We might potentially be doing the West Ham versus Spurs game on Wednesday as well. But we'll wait and update you as we plan those. And obviously, just keep an eye on the channel to see which ones get scheduled. If you just turn your notifications on, by the way, then you get a little notification whenever we are going to go live and stuff like that. Please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. If you're here for the rugby show, you're a little bit early. We'll be live for that in about half an hour. Thank you very much.